You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 82, How to Make Your Game Stand Out. Today we talk about how to make your game stand out from another one. We discuss what you should be doing to make your next game new and fresh. We also discuss how to find things that you do well and add them into pieces of your future games. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, his games are frequently nominated for Emmys, Jared.
No, they are not.
Recently, they've all kind of been pretty solid.
Honestly, I'm pretty proud of the games that I've been doing recently, but, I'm always a critic of my own work.
We are our harshest critics.
We are. And, when I look at a game and I typically, if I look at a game and go, holy crap, that was a damn good game. Like, holy shit. That's pretty rare in point of fact with me. It's actually more common than I'm like, that was okay.
I mean, I could point out your last, big game. Which one do you think it was?
Red Lake.
Red Lake was very good, but you had one more recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
Vodthane, your dwarf game.
Ah, yes, that was a good game. That was solid. But, I still had critiques of myself.
There were critique moments in there,
yeah,
but it was very tight and very well executed.
Well, thank you.
And it was very interesting as well in terms of how things kind of worked out in the game. In direction and stories. You had it was akin to Red Lake.
Yeah.
Red Lake was very well thought out, but kind of ended up as a I'd say in overall there were some happy mistakes in there. You were able to get some stuff out of it that I don't think you had planned. And
yes,
I think that
very much
Vodthane
so.
You had mega planned.
Oh, okay? God, yes.
You had it planned to a T, and you could just see it was like a well-orchestrated dance. We had everything kind of worked out, and you still got to add little moments in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you the city clerk who you guys had a blast interacting with, his voice wasn't planned. I planned that on the spot, and you guys just were tickled by the voice.
Oh, yes.
I think you guys, especially when you got him very upset. Because he's an idiot! And to find out that, priests don't make the best criminal cover-up group. Well, thank you. I didn't know that had registered as such a success.
I feel like it should have registered as a success with you, too.
It did. It registered as a solid base run. At least to second base. I didn't think of it as a homer.
And again, this is the point of today's topic, which is how do you make your game stand out? When you execute a really well-run game like you did in Red Lake, which was almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Your next game, you naturally want to continue to follow up on what you just did in the last game because it was such a hit, such a success. But how do you make your next game stand out? How do you push the envelope or change the tone to get maybe not your next game, because your next game might just be a good game that people enjoy, but how do you get to that next, gem?
How do you separate how do you make, I guess what I'm getting from the topic is, how do you make your next game substantially different from the first, differentiate it, and at the same time still maintain the high quality that you had from the previous one? Am I getting that?
Yeah, you don't want to keep doing the same thing that you did in Red Lake, which is, isolation, desolation. You don't want to keep driving on those themes.
Yes, because you will burn out
even though it was very successful, and you can't have every mystery be identical, there's a very crazy supernatural killer hidden amongst all these people, and it's very tight. You've got everything very well orchestrated there. It's just very tough. How do you make it so? Because we're telling mysteries right now, so we can even frame it in that context. Is how do you make it that your next game is doing something different? Like, I know that we always try to experiment with new things, but you got to find the next thing that works. You can't just keep returning to the same well.
No, you can't. I mean, typically, when we've been doing these mysteries, and so, for our audience, I mean, there's a lot of storytelling going on over here because we're doing shorter, more compact storytelling. Typically lasts from like 3 to 5 sessions, and then there's a whole new game that essentially pops up. No, it's not a whole new game, but a whole new story. So typically, when I get an idea, I chase after that idea just a little bit in my head to see if it goes. Like, before I even write anything down on paper, I chase the idea. Like, I'll say, like, okay, I want to do a home invasion. Defend against a home invasion. That's actually a really good idea for a game. Shit. Shit. Guess you figured out your next game. Shit. Okay, so getting past my
disappointment. Already had a great game idea that he wants now run. And
now I want to run, and I can't do that now. At least for a little bit. Got to let Aaron forget about it for a minute.
Got to let that percolate for a little bit.
Yep. So I typically chase after the idea, and I do actually compare to my most recent game. Now, fortunately for us, one of the main things to kind of identify in your mind when you're chasing after, because a lot of people get an idea for a scene. I want to have, at least that's how it comes to me. I don't know about most people. They don't just sit there and like, boop, I got the whole storyline. Right? They come up with a single scene that they expand upon into a story. I want to have a cool car chase scene. All right, how do I get to the car chase? And they start widening out the story from there. I kind of reflect on my last game. Did I do that in the last game? Have I done that? Have I done that in any recent games? I probably haven't done a car chase in years. I know I did a big one with Brian several years ago, but that was about it. And there's mechanics to it. So the one thing that, or one of the things that I tend to do is I try to look, how am I pushing the envelope? Am I doing something that I haven't done ever or in a while? For example, we just talked about a car chase scene. That's something I think that if I threw in a game, you'd be pleasantly surprised. Like, holy shit, we haven't done a car chase in forever.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, and
we sort of had a car chase in one of your games.
We did. It was a monster
chasing us
you in a car. But when it comes right down to it, it's been a while since we've done that, and it's not exactly the same thing because there are totally different system mechanics to a car chase. There really is. I mean, there's drive rolls, and I wasn't actually like following the book rules. So typically, when I'm developing that intense scene that I want, I'm going to do a deep dive into those rules. I'm going to type them up so I can quick reference them very quickly before we even get into the game. I mean, like, that one's established. Unless, like I said, I really want a big shootout. I want a huge shootout. No, even then I tend to do a deep dive because, like, off the top of my head, I know how to do firearms rolls very quickly, but if I want to shoot out that, you guys are flipping tables to use as cover, how do I determine when the table has taken enough damage that it's no longer viable as cover? I'll brush up on that, do a little brush up. So what you're doing is you're taking new ideas, and you're actually, it's one of the ways you can almost identify, do I have to look up something new? Something that I, as a storyteller, have not researched a lot or looked into for very long. You know, like, oh man, I haven't done ice climbing in forever. How do I do that in D&D? You know, is it just a climb roll? Actually, like, I think I actually looked into that, like a wilderness survival aspect. And I actually had to go to D&D for ideas because they have rules for if you're climbing a mountain and there's, 1 foot of snow compared to 3 foot of snow. They have rules for that shit. They're like, the 3 foot of snow is 50% mobility. The 4 feet of snow is 55%. Like, holy shit. Shocking. So, but helpful, very helpful. So if you are learning yourself, or refamiliarizing yourself with something, that's a good indicator to yourself that you're doing something new. It's a pretty good indicator. Now, it's kind of funny that I guess I kind of led with the details. I mean, there's a simpler way to differentiate your game. Make sure the setting's different. Last time we did the Mountains of Mordor. This time we're going to do the Plains of Kal-El, which is Superman's actual name, so, but, whatever. The Plains of the Khaleesi. There we go. That's at least in the same genre.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So, I don't just want to tell our listeners the easy stuff. Change your setting. Okay, we've gone from mountains to plains. Change your mood. I've gone from horror to adventure. Change your theme. I've gone from, man versus God to man versus nature. Because there's 36 identifiable, like, storylines or something like that. You can actually look it up in any book about writing, and about genres and stuff like that. There's only like 36 identifiable subplots, and they're or not subplots, but plot line or themes, which is like man versus God, man versus himself, man versus nature, or 36 essential conflicts. That's what it is. The 36 conflicts. And it's a fascinating read because, that might open up your mind to a whole new realm of like, man, I've never thought about like doing a story which is centered around man versus himself. I've never done a story about insanity, which actually, if you play Cthulhu, you've done it every freaking time because they have an insanity meter.
Yeah.
And if you've done D&D, you've done man versus nature probably more times than you care to count. And, if you've done White Wolf, it's man versus man or man versus monster almost, or monster versus monster, every time, it's pretty cool when you look
Usually
at it.
Boils down to one of those. Yeah. You always have to boil it down to one of those big ones.
30. Yeah. There's like specifically like 36 identifiable essential conflicts.
So yeah, I mean, what you're going to do is obviously, besides the big things that Jared mentioned there, changing your setting, you're always trying to think though, like, I never look at it in like the conflict type that I've got man versus X. I look at it in like, okay, I just did this really intense mystery. Do I want to do something that's a little bit more pointed? Okay, where the players are going to walk through it a lot easier. The clues are going to be more, right there in front of your face, and let the players kind of go through it. Kind of this like lull of social, mental, and then go into like the physical game. Or, am I taking it into, my last big thing that I executed was a series of stories around like a big, long storyline. I probably could have done a whole campaign out of it had I just done it straight up.
Yeah, the blood.
Yeah, and when you end up getting to the end of it there, I mean, like, I look at some of those and I go, some of those were really well executed and some of them weren't. But I think the whole of it kind of came together. But I always try to do something different with each one of those, so no two were exactly identical in the story.
You did very good at that. Very good. You did very good. You did very well at that. And that was actually one of my favorite things about Blug was he wasn't a one-trick pony as a villain. Really his way of gaining people to him and his forms of attack were always very different. In one episode we have a pig monster. In another episode we had a creepy gardener.
You had like the plague.
You had the plague. He was very varied in his attacks in our engagements. So you did a very great job with that. And I mean, like, that kind of follows into another point of are you varying your villains, methods? If your villain is almost always the creepy necromancer, how are you differentiating that in a game? Well, creepy necromancers always use the dead. And here's the thing. It does take a lot to differentiate your games because a lot of people stick to one genre of games or one attack mode or one I do horror because it's comfortable.
Don't get me wrong. You do horror exceptionally well.
Yeah, and I love doing horror. Okay. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is it's sometimes I got to walk out of my comfort zone, and it's worked. Like, Vatfade was not horror.
No, even when you're not doing horror, you can always sprinkle in, just like we talked about in the emotions episode, eliciting emotions. Mm-hmm. You can always sprinkle in something that creates that moment of horror in a game.
Yes.
So you can have a game that's more, I guess, beat 'em up, action-y, okay? And then you sprinkle in this like moment of horror, this moment that is very, very scary.
Yes.
Or very, very creepy, or very, very out of the ordinary. And I think that helps you be able to put your stamp on the thing that you do really well. Because what you should be able to do as a GM is you should be able to, if I said tomorrow, I want you to go out, unless you're a brand new GM. If you're a brand new GM, you'll figure this out. But I would have you say, if you're experienced, you've run several games, you know the storyline that you can execute very well. Okay? Yeah. Is it save the princess that the king, charged you with a dragon or something like that? Okay? Or is it I have a necromancer and he's, killing a bunch of people and turning them undead and creating an undead army? Or is it I'm very, very good at creating small, short, massive intrigue things like the Hateful Eight kind of thing, where like you're all in there and everybody doesn't know each other, and they're very socially confined, defined spaces that like are really intense. Okay, there's all sorts of things that you can do that are different, but you should know which ones you execute the best. You should know, like, I do this type of combat really well, and my players love it.
Yep. Like, I do horror really well. If I don't, toot my horn. But that's what I do well, and I really enjoy scaring the shit out of my players. It's something that I'm like, yay! But I've stepped into other realms, and I enjoy going for a time period. Like I said, Vatfade was not a story of horror. It was a good solid base hit when I walk away. It's a different kind of emotional kick for me when my players are like, oh my God, that was a really in-depth cerebral mystery. When my emotional kick tends to be when my, friends say, like, I was scared walking out of your house last night into the dark. That for me, I'm like, but, comparatively to my friends are like, that was a really cerebral mystery and we really loved it. I don't get the same emotional kick. But that's the thing is that as a good storyteller, you should learn that, holy crap, like, a good cerebral mystery is a good thing. Or my friends are, they're always used to my puzzle games and they love my puzzle games. And I put together a really good action one. For you might be like, it was all right. It was action. Like, it was okay. 'Cause you really love putting together your puzzles. But you should take pride in that, and it's hard to step away from what we're used to, what we love to do, our cherished genres. but when we expand it, we really give our players something new. It's a truly a new adventure. You know what I mean? I think there's so many storytellers that are, they look at the Tolkien-esque, and not to rap on that. It's a waka, go save, go destroy horrible ring, bad ring, die in fire.
It's the epic quest.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I found the words that I was looking for. The epic quest, and it's something else for your players. It's truly a new adventure if you're doing the epic quest with level zero heroes. Level zero heroes. You know what I mean? It's something else entirely when the epic quest is one of not just we go to the forest, we fight the goblins, we keep on walking, and it's a variety of the kind of losing my own self in there. But it's something else to be like, this is a high octane fight that takes place in one city. Like how
or in
different
one room. I mean,
how different for your players to be not walking. Well, our horses traveled over 79 miles. What happens in the story where they don't have to use fucking wagons? Whoa. Our story takes place in a single freaking city? The whole story? How detailed can you get in that? And it's a passion of mine to really get, because most of our games take place in small towns, because obviously big cities are a little bit harder to do for the horror genre because, they have multitudes of police and law enforcement.
Yeah, look at anything, any game that you play, like a Resident Evil, something like that. It's always in a very confined place.
Isolation is key.
Again, like you have to recognize that your setting needs to match the thing that you want to convey.
Yeah,
obviously, but it's super like how many different tropes can you do within small town? Can you push the envelope and do horror in a big city? Okay, like those are questions you should ask yourself. So if you do horror very well, like Jared does, can you do horror in a big city, in a place where there's a lot of comforts, there's a lot of people, which are the things that tend to make things less scary?
Yeah, knowing there's somebody else here is less scary. Not being alone. We're humans. We're not pack animals, but we're communal animals.
Social animals.
Social animals. Because I don't know what you call a group of gorillas.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But that's what we are. I guess, it's funny. You call it a cyclone of scorpions. We call it a community of humans. What do you call a group of humans? I don't know. Now I'm going to have to look that up. We have the lamest name. It's a cyclone of scorpions. It's a community of humans. That doesn't sound cool. So, when you really switch the whole universe, it can be so scary, but you can really dive deep into a city and really get an underbelly and a history going and what happens behind closed doors. Look at Batman. Batman is not an epic journey. Batman works in one city, Gotham, period. But the stories of Gotham are endless. You know what I mean?
You've talked about this, and I think this maybe was one of your motivations in Vathane, was there's a story behind every door, right?
That was my motivation in Vathane. There was a story because almost every NPC that I generated had a story, and it is something that I've also followed into my next game called Land of Promise that I'm developing, is that all these people have stories, because that was so successful in Vathane. It was actually Everything Old is New Again is actually the name of the story. Everything Old is New Again, there was a story behind every door, and my players complimented how much the NPCs were different, and there was a variety of personalities. This was something that I took away from our last session of that game, was something that Brian pointed out. He's like, the NPCs were so different. They were different people, you know what I mean? And I really took that away, and I'm bringing that into Land of Promise. So we're going to see very different NPCs, with different personalities, with relationships and stuff like that. Because, in we'll just call it Vatade because it's easier than saying, everything old is new again. It's shorter, tighter. I should go with one word titles, Vatade. So, the king was, his wife was cheating on him with a local priest. Suspect, everyone, typically it is the people. It's really weird. We're most likely to be killed by the people that love us the most, or are supposed to typically love us. Murders happen within the first circle of intimacy. It's almost always typically the boyfriend, the husband, the wife, the girlfriend. So that's always a pleasant thought to think on, that you're probably going to get murdered by the one you love. Oh, put that in a Valentine's Day card.
But it's very. I mean, you bring up a good point though with the VOD thing, which is that every one of your NPCs had that. And if you think about a big city, and again, a lot of people want to put settings in a big city. In a way, you almost have to limit that big city to be able to accomplish that. Every door has a story kind of thing there. You're effectively picking out your locations in the city to become that to be able to put those stories behind those doors there. So even when you go bigger setting, smaller setting, it's possible to execute the same genre that you had just previously done. Now, one next piece that I want to bring up, and I've been trying this in a couple of my games, is integrating a new component into gaming that we've never used before. So, in one of my games previously, I had a situation where an event happened, and then you replayed the exact same event, and I was worried about how you guys were going to react.
That was a fantastic element. I loved it. I know you were worried, but it worked out great.
Well, I was worried about it because I was worried that you would be knowing KYP, knowing you and Brian, more so knowing you, because Brian would have probably gone along with whatever the heck I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yes, Jared is the more difficult of the two players at the table.
Sorry.
But knowing you don't like things without purpose, generally.
Typically, yes.
So when I do something, I don't want to make it that you have lost the purpose in the game. I've done that before in the past.
I hate dream sequences.
I've learned why I shouldn't do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I've very much, I worked under a storyteller, played under a storyteller. Sorry about that, folks. And now I can't get it to stop, of course. Don't touch it, Jared. Who loved dream sequences. I find dream sequences to be je ne sais quoi infuriating. I do. Because it's like everything I just accomplished meant nothing. Boop, nothing. It's maddening to me. And that's why I felt your rewind. But when it comes down to a dream sequence or a time loop, really how you maintain importance in that is the threat of lethality. Okay? If a dream sequence is not lethal or cannot be lethal, it is thus means nothing to the players. Now I can do whatever I want. Now I can become the Kender who runs down the darkened hallway. Doesn't have to worry about it. And it was actually something you taught me. When we played a game that was a flashback game, it was called War of Our Fathers. You figured out back then, you were like, well, our fathers obviously survived, so we can't die.
Yes, the past sequence thing is messed up because you cannot actually kill the characters
you can't.
So when you play with
if
time,
they're related.
Yeah, if you play within time, don't let the characters play the important ones. Let the characters play something else that's ancillary to the important ones. Actually, had you done War of Our Fathers, we saw our fathers, we played characters that walked beside them.
Yeah, it would have worked out a lot better.
It would have worked out better because we would have seen the motivation of our fathers.
Right.
We would have had the same tone that you wanted in the part of the game, and we could have died.
Yes. And unfortunately, once you figured out that you were fucking immortal, and it was actually my players who shut down that game. I think you were the one who finally told me, like, Jared, this is lame.
We shut down that part of it. I think you just instinctually figured it out that we had to shut it down.
No, I'm pretty sure you, like, legit was like, Jared, this is lame as fuck.
No, you figured it out. I don't recall giving you this because I recall you eventually looking at it and going, okay, there is no end to this.
Yeah, this chapter has to go. And
you didn't know how to keep doing the crossings from East Berlin to West Berlin. You didn't know how to keep, because like that was all we were effectively doing. But I'm like, the first one was very tense.
Yep.
Everyone that we progressively went through beyond that, like, you can't kill us in the crossing.
I can't get you, and it thus became lame. But so when you're looking at that variety of element, what are you doing? Are you manipulating time? That's something Aaron's experimenting with, and so far his experiments are going extremely well, in my personal opinion. Are you playing with cool elements like, I don't know, if you're set in a modern game, are you doing cool elements like slow motion hits? When you're describing something, you're like, okay, in slow motion, this is what happens, And it's just a new storytelling technique that you can bring to your game to differentiate it from the last one. And it's something you might bring along to future games, but it's something that you might just leave specially for that game. I love the idea of the slow motion description. I don't use it in every game. I don't. But you might even do like in the past I've done the explanation of ammunition hitting. I shouldn't say ammunition, bullets, because it's no longer ammunition after it's separated. It's now a bullet and an empty cartridge.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you. In case anyone was wondering, it's expended ammunition now. So I've done, like deep descriptions of bullets hitting not their targets, actually. Like the walls around him, saying there's drywall dust flying everywhere. And I've done very in-depth descriptions of that kind of action with firearms. But I don't do it every time. I don't.
So you do it when you want there to be impact with the scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it does bring new life into a game.
But think about the first time that I did it. It brought something to that game, because literally the first time that I ever did it was, so for our listeners, Aaron and Brian have had an ongoing joke for years. I am talking since we were in high school.
Well, yeah.
No. I'm telling you your embarrassing story now. You put out my chefs in the kitchen, ladies and gentlemen. Go back to that episode about that. All right, you put out my chefs in the kitchen and the kitchen feud fuck up. That was horrible. So I'm going to tell the whole world about your and Brian's consistent joke. So almost at the beginning of almost every game, and I actually love the joke. It's hilarious because it always dives into something crazy. So Aaron and Brian have always had a mock rivalry in game, where essentially at the beginning of the game, when I did a lot of sandbox games, I'd be like, what are you going to do? Here's the setting. What do you do? And one of them or both of them simultaneously would say, I liquidate my assets, buy a gun. And now I'm going to hunt the other one. And this is years, ladies and gentlemen. This is years of just like, and it's cut down to quite literally, like, I'll be like, okay, and, I can have this monumentous introduction, and Aaron would be like, I liquidate, buy a gun, and just so they have cash and a gun to hunt each other. So I decided just one time, to actually do a game surrounding them trying to kill each other. But it was a comedy game. It wasn't. We weren't being super serious. And then I tried to pivot it to a serious game where they would start off by trying to kill each other, but then actually become allies.
You actually did do it in the first. Well, so the way that you did it was Brian was a thief who had stolen from my character.
Yeah.
Okay. And I liquidated and bought a gun to go hunt Brian. I found Jared started the game where I had figured out where he was going to be, where his next hit was going to be. And I came in to go hunt down Brian. And sure enough, when I got there, somebody else showed up with some guns. Okay. And that was when you went into the scene where you were explaining the fire, and I ducked behind the fence. I heard the clicking of a shotgun, and I was like, "Oh shit!" As I started running,
Aaron realized that a wooden plywood fence or it wasn't even plywood; it was just a wooden fence is not going to stop a shotgun.
As he's blowing out parts of the fence,
the fence behind as Aaron's running. It was a good time. It was a really great game, but that was something new to the game. That I think it added a flavor. That was the first time it had ever done that, where I was like slow motion. You see the wood chips flying.
I thought you did it in the Tijuana game too when we were.
Oh, I did do it in the Tijuana game, and that was another great game. You know, well, like it was again another comedy.
It was actually the exact point of this episode, which was you had just finished up a 2-year campaign, super serious. We did all sorts of stuff. And you
stopped the end of the world.
Stopped the end of the world. Jared, then we both made brand new werewolf characters, okay, after just playing werewolves. So, again, if you're looking for maybe a mistake or something that you shouldn't do right there is, and this is tough in the D&D world. This is really tough in the D&D world because the character base are all the same, meaning you only still have the same types of characters to choose from. Okay, it's the story that you put in front of the characters that's going to change. Okay, but let's say that every player decides to change their class up. Okay, and make something new. How do you make that next game interesting? And this was Jared saying, "I cannot have you save the end of the world. Instead, I'm going to do this kind of romp in Tijuana, where you're going to be getting into all sorts of fights." And it started with a huge gunfight.
It did.
Okay, it was like totally over the top from what the other game was. The other game was epic fantasy. This was like, if you ever seen the movie Domino, like
yes,
or a Michael Bay film. This is shit's just blowing up.
Shit was, I mean, like for some odd reason, the bartender had a machine gun behind the bar, and I'm not talking about like, oh, he had like an AR-15. No, I'm talking like a M249 saw or squad automatic weapon. All right, it's a light machine gun. Look up it's got a 150 round belt magazine, or 200 round. I think it comes in both. But either way, it's a machine gun. Like, and it was fun. It was over the top. It was around, and we needed that. We needed a change in our story because, like Aaron said, we had just gotten out of a 2-year, very protracted campaign that was, as Aaron described, almost epic fantasy.
We did so much in that game, and then to come into that it thankfully was a very different game. Okay? I didn't know exactly where you were thinking about going with it because you did a mistake, which is you did a future scene, and then you brought us back in the time. And
yes.
So, again, I learned. I think that was actually where I probably
never go to the future.
Like
always the past.
Yeah, go to the past, then bring you to future day. Okay, fill in the blanks. Don't go future. You can't do Memento.
You can't.
Okay, it doesn't work.
Nope.
If you've ever executed Memento, levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Tell me how you did it.
We want your secrets.
I want your secrets. Tell me your secrets.
That's great.
Okay, but otherwise, we ended up. It was a good game, and it for the 5, 6, 10 sessions we got out of it, it was something very different. But it was still werewolf. Mm-hmm. And then I think that I think looking back on it, had you changed it to doing like, we're going to do something else in the World of Darkness and we'll do this really fun game, I think that would have made it even better. Now looking back on it.
Yeah, you know, and very fortunately for White Wolf, you know, they come down to, you know, you've got a variety of kind of systems to work with. There's vampire, werewolf, mage, hunter, ghost, wraith, but ghost. You know, with D&D, it's. I mean, essentially, you need to actually go back to. Oh, I can't believe I'm saying this for the 900th time. You know, like episode 1, The Gathering, and your session 0. Because if you've just done a game, one way to differentiate your game from another one is who the PCs can be. You know, if you've just done a mixed group, you know, we had 2 elves, 1 dwarf, and 3 humans. That was our last game, you know, let's say. Maybe try a game that's all dwarf. All elf. That's something new. It's okay, we're cooperative races. You know, there isn't going to be the banter of the dwarf making fun of the elves. Interesting. You know, and that's something new. It's really about bringing something. I feel so stupid saying this, but it's about bringing something new to the table, something they haven't seen before that's really going to differentiate. And you can go into the nitty-gritty details. You can either do it very easily. If you're a beginning level storyteller, you know, change the season the game takes place in. Change the location. Change the type of character races that are authorized. Change the location from Epic Quest to a single city. You know, change one of the 36 conflicts that you're engaging in. You know, last time we fought a necromancer. This time we fight a god. You know, that's on the more, you know, we're getting into storytelling. We're just trying to level it up a little bit. At the more advanced levels, start playing with things that give you a little bit of a heartbeat. Shit, I've never played with time before. Or shit, I've never done a car chase before. Or shit, I've never, you know, done all. This is why we have an explicit lyric, because I just said like shit like 4 times in a row.
Oh, one of the last episodes, you were like, you're on the fuckity fuck train to fuck town or something like that. It was
really,
it was terrible.
You know what's funny? For our listeners, I actually swear less than my wife.
You swear more around us.
I do, but at home with Allie, yeah, she swears a ton more than I do.
Oh, at home I swear like none. My fiance is like I always call her a truck driver. She's got the truck driver.
Really?
Route. Oh God, yes.
Get the fuck out! I don't believe that for a second.
I always make fun of her too, because she'll say it like I'll be saying something and she goes like, "Fuck," and I'm like, "Fuck," as I pointed out to her. I'm like, what kind of reaction is that?
She swears?
Oh yes.
I can't imagine it. I'm sorry, I can't picture that. It does not register with me. Sorry, brah. I mean, like, you can see it from my wife. You can tell she swears. So my wife's a little bit of a Billy badass. But yeah, no. You know, when you're going into the advanced stuff, bringing new elements or things that scare the storyteller to engage, I can say yes. Do that. Do your research on it. Do a lot of research on it. Maybe make some handmade notes just for quick reference, so you don't have to be like, shit, it was on page 32, 34, 36, I'm not sure. And you got to look it up in the middle of the game. It ruins the flow. You know, just have those quick rules right in front of you, right next to you.
That sounds good. Is there anything else you want to add to this one, Jared?
No. I think we've offered a lot.
Sounds good. Well, if you have tips for how you like to differentiate your games from one to the other, whether that be shorter games, longer campaigns, even things that maybe you run at a con, one-shots, you know, how do you change up your game? Contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can contact us at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. You can comment on the episode, or you can send us a message there. We're happy to reply, happy to field any questions or any comments on the episode or any questions about other future episodes or other questions about role-playing in general. And we're also on YouTube, so
switch it up and pound that like button.
Nice. Make sure it's blue when you're done. And then
blue is good.
Blue is good.
Blue is good.
And again, go ahead and recommend this to your friends. Rate the podcast on your favorite podcast site. And again, subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. We do appreciate it. It's going to wrap us up for the week. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.